Defence Secretary John Healey, I asked him several times this morning whether or not the government was supporting this action. Several times he neither said yes or no. Are you very clear what the government's position on this is?
Well, I think they know perfectly well that it's an illegal war. And in particular, the Prime Minister, who's a human rights lawyer, knows it's an illegal war, and that's why they don't want to come out and say they support it.
Do you think in terms of what happens next, we were hearing there from Jennifer Ewing, that this is high risk for Trump? How high risk is it for the rest of the world?
Well, the Middle East is always a source of instability, has been for decades and decades. But the idea that, bombing Iran is a way to stabilise the Middle East, I mean, that's not serious.
Of course, there will be people. There are many people. We've heard some of them actually rung in this morning, British Iranians. They loathe the Ayatollah. They loathe the regime. They have been yearning for the West, and Trump in particular, to intervene for weeks and indeed years. They want it to fall. He's murderous. He's barbaric. He's oppressive. Whoever replaces him will likely be the same. Can you understand why so many...
Oh, I understand it. Anyone can understand it. I mean, it's a horrible regime and he's a murderous man, but the regime is not going to fall just like that. And it's a war of choice. They've chosen to go to war. And I think this is going to go on a long time. So I understand why people are glad to see him go. But the idea that, suddenly Iran's going to turn into a liberal regime, I mean, that's not serious.
Do you think that it is possible that the people there do what the president has urged them to do, which is rise up and try and overthrow their government?
Yeah, but the army, the armed forces, the military guard and so on, many of them are still loyal. So I just think it's going to be like Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq. It's going to become unstable. We don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to go on for a long time.
Keir Starmer himself, do you think, you've alluded to this, is it the internet, is the reason, he's walked this delegate dance now on Venezuela, on Iran now as well. He's actually going less far than, for example, the Prime Minister of Canada has done, who has been more full-throated in support. Is this the sort of international lawyer in him that can't quite be hidden at moments like this?
It's an illegal war. It's an illegal war, full stop, and Keir knows that. And so he really can't say much more than he's saying. In
2003, Starmer wrote that the UN Resolution 1441 didn't authorise war in Iraq, that it was illegal. Do you think his assessment would be the same today?
I don't want to speak for Keir Starmer, and he wouldn't want me to speak for him.
No, I think that's fair.
But it is an illegal war. Everybody knows that.
Is it legal?
In a word, yes. And unfortunately, it's the incorrect legal framework that's been applied. So given that you seem to be inclined to think it's a moral war, I hope you'll be relieved to hear that the correct legal analysis. I think international law is critically important. And that's why there's a significant problem around it being misrepresented in this fashion, in particular by the Guardian article that you quoted. And I would disagree with Alistair Burt in this respect. I think it is very important that we uphold the international legal order. And
but we never did after Iraq, did we? So that sort of gives you a feeling that international law, who cares?
I hope you'll give me the opportunity to respond in full, because it is not the correct legal framework that has been applied. What we have is an ongoing armed conflict between Israel and Iran for a number of decades. And in a situation of ongoing armed conflict, the analysis that you've referenced, which refers to a resort to force, isn't the applicable framework. It is the laws of armed conflict in an ongoing armed conflict that apply. So proportionality, distinction, precaution, and military necessity. And those are the rules that govern the exercise of the use of force.
It's said that Iran is at its lowest capability to strike back in 50 years. So the justification that you're offering is diminished year after year.
No, quite the contrary. The justification is the existence of the ongoing armed conflict in which strikes by Israel on military targets is lawful at a very basic
level. And 108
schoolgirls
killed, the girls killed in southern... that's not a military target, is it?
I think we need to be very careful about repeating Iranian state TV.
Well, we have to be very careful about not... I'm very mindful of the fact that the Israeli government rained down on the death toll in Gaza and has subsequently admitted that all the claims are true.
I notice you didn't interrupt your other guest.
I've interrupted all my guests when I fancy it, because it's my show, Natasha, but you carry on.
I know, but if I can finish a sentence, you might have a better understanding of the applicable international law. And I would caution repeating Iranian state government propaganda. Israel has been clear that it did not strike that school, which it appears is within or just next to an IRGC compound. And the scores of deaths reported by the Iranian Islamic regime feature very strongly the same hallmarks of Hamas fake casualty figures. Of course, Hamas being an Iranian proxy, it's perhaps not surprising that they adopt similar
tactics. How many people did die in Gaza then?
But coming back to we know that it was less than what is being reported.
Well, give us a figure. You know the figures. What are they?
We know that it was. We know that the number of combatants that have been identified is between 20 and 30,000. That much has been stated by a reputable source. But may I come back to the international law aspects?
Well, it's just interesting because we've had children killed in Iran, and you're saying don't believe the figures.
Well, no,
and then you also say don't believe the figures in Gaza. I mean, whose figures should I believe?
I'm also saying that the reports that this may have been an IRGC missile that fell short need to be taken seriously. I haven't seen that in any of the reporting. This is an ongoing situation in the fog of war where the causes of that particular strike and the consequences of it are as yet unclear. But immediately the response across the international media has been to point the finger at Israel and adopt the fake casualty figures of the Islamic regime in Iran. May I return, though, to the international law aspects of this, because it's extremely important that the wrong framework is being applied. I note that the journalist in The Guardian isn't an international lawyer. I also
Saeed Bakeri is a specialist, a professor in law, and he has a similar view.
I also know, there are many international lawyers that have unfortunately been approaching this with the wrong legal framework.
Well, Natasha, all I can say is I'm very glad I spoke to the one that knows it best.
There obviously was a trigger for the American government, for President Trump to intervene, and Britain chose to sit it out and sit on the fence.
I suppose the Prime Minister might be worried that it's illegal.
Well, the Prime Minister is famously a human rights lawyer and he listens to his Attorney General, but legalities aside, number one, there is a moral duty to act. We have British nationals in the region. We have been threatened by Iran. Iran is a threat to our country. Iran facilitates proxies in our own country. You've heard what I've had to say about the IRG and the fact that our Foreign Secretary has taken no action or expelled even Iranian representatives of their government in this country. I just don't think that's good enough, and I think the government's been very weak.
But you say legalities aside. I mean, look, no, I don't think anybody sensible could possibly mourn the death of the Ayatollah. He was a murderous, barbaric man leading a murderous, barbaric regime. But international law is what international law is. Do you think this was legal or not?
Do you not think that Iran has absolutely...
Absolutely.
They don't care about international law whatsoever.
But we do.
Well, so we do, absolutely. There's no question about that. But the moral case for taking action, is absolutely there. Also, we're now drawn into this because, quite frankly, we have British citizens in the region and our allies have been affected. So we are involved in this now. And whether or not our bases should have been used, that's gone.
So practically, what do you think the British government should do now?
The British government should absolutely be working hand in hand to support our allies in the region, number one. And obviously, they'll still be relying on a lot of intelligence from both America and from Israel in terms of what will now follow. And the British government will have to, this is now a watch and brief. They will have to work out what is the best way to act to protect our allies and also British citizens in the region.
So to be clear, Dame Priti, your position is that this action was moral, but you're not convinced, or perhaps you don't much care that it was legal.
Look, the British government would have had all the basis, the legal basis and the information to make that decision. They are the ones hiding behind. They'll have to explain their own course of action to the British people. They're the ones basically using international law as some kind of excuse right now. They were the ones privy to the information in detail. I would ultimately say that first and foremost, Iran absolutely is a barbaric regime. Action should have been taken. The government has been weak in its response, absolutely weak in its response, and it's shown that it's not a reliable ally to the United States and also to our allies in the region.
But of course, we have seen that this president, I mean, he abducted the president of Venezuela, again, another murderous, barbaric man, but nonetheless he did that.
Was working with the regime in Iran.
And we've seen him call for regime change in Iran, kill its leaders. As I say, no one should spare a single thought for Maduro or Khamenei. Monsters both in their own ways. But these actions are in their own ways making the world less stable, aren't they?
Well, I think the world was less stable and insecure with Iran funding its proxies, being the number one country of state-sponsored terror around the world.
As you say yourself, the regime will likely survive.
Well, we don't know if it will survive. I've said that the regime, the IRGC, which the British government has not taken any action against, even though our allies in the Gulf, by the way, have been calling on Britain to take action against the IRGC. We've got a government that has been sitting on the fence, and
Those allies are now being attacked.
Well, we have to be there defending them and protecting them.